Welcome to Popcorn Planet. I am Andy Signore. I'm so excited to be here with Gothix. Welcome to the show, Gothix. So happy to have you back. We have been chatting a bit, and we're talking about something controversial. I know that's what she does a lot. I love to do it when I can. And I want to get into this because I got some feelings. And I'm curious if we're going to agree. I'll love if we don't, because I know we'll be civil about it. But I want to break down sort of what's going on currently with Joe Rogan, because there's a lot that happened over the weekend. Now, just a quick recap. So for those of you who had not paid attention, Joe Rogan was previously under fire for spreading misinformation, is what people had called it. They were trying to push him off of Spotify because he was putting out informations about the Rona and having guests on that were sort of against the narrative of things, and it really was upsetting certain people. And the reality, though, was it didn't get him pushed off Spotify. Spotify, was under a lot of pressure. Neil Young, Joni Mitchell, some other artists, put on the pressure to sort of remove our music if you're going to keep Joe Rogan, which is very weird of Neil Young, Mr. Free, keep on rocking in the free world, trying to do this weird censorship attempt. But whatever, he didn't believe in Joe. He wanted to be off the platform. I guess that's his freedom too. And it got a lot of pressure. Joe managed to stay through and get through. Over this weekend, however, they came with a new attack. They unearthed a bunch of clips of Joe Rogan from his past, racist clips. They're labeling Joe now a racist. And I want to go through some sort of what this is. Joe Rogan was seemingly forced to apologize. I guess that's the first question I want to ask you, Gothix. Do you feel like Joe did this on his own volition, or do you believe that Spotify sort of quietly pressured him to apologize?
I think he did this on his own, and I think he's doing it because he's trying to play both sides to the fence. You cannot negotiate with people that don't value free speech. You can't play ball with them. And I think he's trying to, because I've done the same thing, kind of playing both sides. So yeah, I think this is all him doing, and I don't think he should have apologized for anything.
All right, interesting. I want to get more into that. I want to sum up what he was accused of. Then we can watch the apology, and then we can have a discussion, because I know a lot of you aren't. I don't like to play old clips and dig them up. I don't support this at all. I think this mob mentality, social media justice is abhorrent for our society. What you say in the past doesn't define you today, for the record. So I'm not sharing these to expose or cancel him. I think, and we need to have all the pieces of the puzzle now out there to have this conversation. So apologies in advance for having to relive and put all this, but at the same time, I do have some thoughts on what he said here. The first clip that came up was a montage of him using the N-word. It was about 20, 25 times or so. Am I seemingly right with my approximation, Gothix? I think so. A couple dozen times.
Yeah.
No idea what the context of these were. As I said, sort of my first preamble, context does matter. Otherwise, we're canceling Leonardo DiCaprio from Django. Otherwise, we're canceling. I have a few here. I mean, if people can't say the N-word and they're canceled, then you got to cancel Joe Biden, because he said it a lot as well. You got to cancel the Young Turks. I wish I could play these clips for you. They are insane. It's the same. If you have a problem with the montage, then you should have a problem with all of this, because you either can say it or you can't say it. So context does matter. And I think the reality is the montage of him saying the N-word wasn't the one that sort of made me go, It was the other two clips in question, I think, upset more people. And I do believe have potential racism attached to them. So let me play them, and I want to talk to you about each one. So first up is this one about Planet of the Apes. They were going to see Planet of the Apes. And here's what he says.
And it says, okay, take me to this one. And the guy goes, okay. I goes, is that in a good neighborhood? He's like, oh, yeah. Guy barely speaks English. He takes us there. We get out, and we're giggling. Oh, we're going to see Planet of the Apes. We walk into Planet of the Apes. We walked into Africa, dude. We walked in the door, and there was no white people.
All right, so now Joe Rogan has apologized for this one. And to me, in hearing it, even he admits it, Gothix, it's like, yeah, it sounds really effing bad. Like it sounds racist, it sounds bad. It sounds like he's calling black people apes. It really does. He explains in his apology, and we'll play the apology in a minute, that later in the show they went off and explained like how much fun they end up having. Like there was no like hateful or racist intent to what he said. However, I can see why this would upset some people, and I can just like his explanation was, well, I didn't realize Planet of the Apes wasn't in Africa. Okay, that's an excuse. But part of me is like, yeah, this is a bad one. This is not a good look. Should he be canceled for it? No, I'm not saying that. But is this a problematic old thing that he said in his past? Sure, I think it's an ignorant thing he said. I don't believe he meant racist intent. But this one bothered me more than the montage. Before I play the next clip, Gothix, do you have a thought on this one?
I think first of all, as you can see, I kind of chuckled at this because I don't find this offensive. I have to recognize that this guy is a comedian and he hangs around comedians. And if the roles were reversed, I'm sure there's lots of old stand-up skits where black comedians have said some pretty bad things about white people and making generalizations about white people. So we can play that game, but I don't find this. I don't see what the big deal about this is. I really don't.
So but for you, I agree to an extent, but I can understand why people are offended on this one. Do you not see that or no?
I can understand why people are offended, but who cares if they're offended? Because now we get into the slippery slope of what is more reasonable, your ability to turn off the TV, change the channel, or your ability to make sure no one says anything ever offensive to your skin color, because that's not reasonable.
That very, very valid point, and because there's a difference, right? People are offended about a lot of things. Okay, I'll acknowledge we're offended, but again, at the final result, should that mean he should be pulled from Spotify? Hell no. Hell no.
No.
Hell no. We should educate and learn from this and be like, yeah, you shouldn't say that kind of shit. It's probably not best for your career. And so here was the second clip. He went on to claim black people have different brain sizes, which was the second one, which again, I can understand why this gave some people pause. Now we're going to get to where these clips came from, and there's more to talk about, but again, just full disclosure, here was the second quote he said.
What are you?
Dad's black, mom's white. Standard issue, pretty much.
Powerful combination genetic-wise, right? You get the body of the black man, and then you get the mind of the white man all together in some strange combination. That doesn't, by the way, mean that black people don't have brains. It's a different brain. Don't get me.
Okay, now again, when I hear that, it doesn't sound good. It's not. I don't know. It's a very weird thought process to have. I can see why people are offended, but again, old clip, ignorant viewpoint. Does that mean he can't change? What are your thoughts?
I don't think people are offended by these clips, if I'm being totally honest with you. I think people are using these clips as an excuse to justify him getting pulled from Spotify. Because these clips have been up for how many years now, and they weren't a problem, and then all of a sudden they're like, you know what? I'm offended by that Joe Rogan clip. No! I think it's foolish.
Yeah, it's weird because it's like, I feel like there's, I feel like race is being used in a dangerous way by a lot of other people to make people like me, a white person, feel like I'm always walking on a tightrope, Gothix. Yeah. It's like this frustration where it's like, is this real racism? Is this really where like the Klan meeting in Orlando that is clearly a way bigger issue of like what's going on there? It's like, to me, it's like, I'm getting frustrated because it's exactly like this to me feels like a calculated attack of things that I don't like what he said. At the same point, who cares what I think? It doesn't matter what I think. But it does feel like there's something bigger behind the scenes that's sort of orchestrating all this. Am I crazy in those thoughts?
No, you're totally right. These people are using racism as a bludgeon to censor people that are going against the mainstream narrative. Pick whatever narrative. If you're going against it, they're going to try to dig up your past and call you racist and try to bring you down. And that's like I said earlier, it's these clips have been around for a very long time. I doubt people are offended by them. And even if they are, who cares? This discussion about racism in the context of these videos, these aren't roadblocks for black people. You can simply turn off the video, go do something else, because it comes down to, this is how I treat like hate speech in general. I look at hate speech as just any other type of speech. It's just speech that you don't like. If someone's not making fun of me because of my skin color, comparing me to a monkey, it's going to be my bad eyebrows. It's going to be my bad haircut. It's going to be me. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's literally just comes down to people saying mean things, and what people say about me is none of my business.
So, yeah, I mean, because it comes down to what you said earlier of, okay, so it offends some people, which you're not even because we're not saying it doesn't offend people. I think we're both agreeing it's going to offend some people. Sure. The question is, should their offense mean that Joe Rogan is punished and removed from the platform is really what I think, if we're just getting to the real issue, that's the real issue, right? Who's hurt is most justified is really what's happening, I think, across the board in so many issues right now, and in social media, cancel culture, et cetera, the mob rule of social media. Of, we're offended, we must remove this person, we must remove this person. Whoopi Goldberg does this. Well, she's fine. Everybody, it's just like a weird hypocrisy, and we're seeing it all over the place. But yeah, it's like who's offended more is really what, as we call it, the professionally offended. Steph as always uses here. The professionally offended are out there just sort of rallying up these people to get upset over things, and it doesn't mean that there's there's not a reason to be upset. I look, as a person, I can understand why some of these two quotes in particular could have upset people. Totally get it. But I got to agree with you, Gothix, that I don't believe it defines him as a racist, right? Do you believe that 2 clips from years ago defines Joe Rogan today?
Not at all. And just to, piggyback off of what you said as a white man feeling like you're walking on eggshells and you can't say certain things, the last 2 years I have seen the most disgusting overt racism from a lot of black people that get behind like these racial injustice causes and trying to blame everything on like the white man causing disruption in society. So if we simply reverse the roles, we'll see that there is something very hypocritical going on. We'll see that there is a political agenda going on, because as you said, you just pulled up a bunch of clips from all these other platforms where they've dropped the N-word and they're still around. So, and if we really are going to go and take it to the extent of, okay, your hurt is so bad that we need to eradicate you off this platform, there wouldn't be any podcasts. There would be no one on the internet, because I'm sure lots of people have said things to hurt the feelings of black people in the past. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. So I guess the next question, because that idea is not, I mean, there's a lot of people are out there. It's more conservative views which are saying this, but I agree with this take. He's too successful. He's too close to uncovering truths. He's a big platform whose narrative can't be controlled, particularly during elections. This threatens too many powerful people. I like Carol. I don't always agree with her, but she's been nice. She had me on her show, and she helped me after I got canceled. And she's oftentimes has takes. And I go, you know what? I agree with this. And I think this is the take that enough people aren't really understanding. Yes, you can be offended by this. Got it. But try to look at the bigger picture here. Like, why now? Why is this coming out now? Because the first attack didn't work. So they're trying to remove his voice. And that's a really dangerous thing. And then you go look at here, which I was doing my homework. Kyle Kalinske, another guy who has some really good takes sometimes. Don't always agree with everything, but I like hearing other viewpoints. And he points out that his 2018 experience was censored by Spotify. He didn't use any slurs. He rallied against Saudi Arabia, and then Spotify just happens to be expanding in the Saudi market at the exact same time that coincides with his banning, as he points out here, proving that, okay, so it's not even just the slurs. They use this opportunity, even Spotify did, to go and remove other questionable things that, certain things are okay for them, certain things are not. So they're going to be free on speech that's hateful. Well, but we're, this one, no, because we're trying to get deals with the Saudis. Spotify, to me, is also a little bit hypocritical, potentially, as to what's going on here. It's so there's so much more behind the scenes here. I want to go to the next point of just the fact that once all this went public over the weekend, there was another sort of target for the mob. Everybody was mad at Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson because he had supported Joe in the misinformation fight and sort of commented on one of his apology videos and said, good for you, man, was sort of what he said. Love, I appreciate this, your growth. Look forward to, chatting with you someday over tequila. And so now fast forward a few days, once this montage surfaced, boom, they were so quick to just completely target and attack The Rock. Now what? Now what, Rock? Now what? What are you going to do? Now what are you going to do? And so I saw this all over. I was watching it happen live. He was sort of frustratingly responding to some people, had to apologize to a couple. And it was this guy, Don Winslow, who's like, you're a hero. You're using your platform to defend Joe Rogan, a guy that used and laughed about the N-word dozens of times, is a terrible use of your power. Have you actually listened to this man's many racist statements about black people? And then he responded, and what I thought was, like you said earlier, a right meet in the middle. It's okay, I gotta address this, but I'm not going to completely condemn him. So he goes, thank you so much. I hear you as everything you said 100%. I was not aware of his N-word use prior to my comments, but now I've become educated to his complete narrative. Learning moment for me. What does that even mean?
That means I'm a coward. That's what that means. If I'm being totally honest with you.
Do you really think this is him bashing Rogan? Because I got to disagree there. I think this is, I got to play to my mob that pays my bills, everybody, but I don't want to completely rip him a new one. So I'm going to say I've become educated to his complete narrative. What does that even mean? Does that mean he watched the apology and is okay with it? Does that mean he only didn't, this could, a complete narrative could mean a lot of things. I don't read this and immediately think he's condemning him, but you do.
No, I don't see that. I think he's trying to be in the middle as completely as possible. And I'm sure some people have called him out on it. Some of these radical people, they're probably like, that's not an apology. But here's the problem is The Rock is apologizing to something to an imaginary entity. Who are you apologizing to? That's the problem, is that you're offering an apology when you didn't do anything wrong.
Right. Well, because he didn't know that this guy, even if he has a problem with the usage, he didn't know. So the fact that all these people were coming at him trying to get a response from him was just sickening to me. It's again the mob justice on social media that's so dangerous.
Yeah.
So we got to always get an update from The Rock on everything Joe Rogan now because
Correct.
he gave one positive comment once. Like,
correct.
What is
But
this
that's the
world
thing,
we
you
live
don't
in?
need to apologize. People that are demanding an apology, they think they're in a position of power to receive that apology when these people don't.
Right. So there you go. So look, so he did in a way turn on Joe, but I think he did it in a fairer way. But what frustrated me more was I understand the hypocrisy here, but seeing these extreme conservatives, Jack Posobiec and Tim Pool, they immediately jumped in to see the blood in the water and expose The Rock for not standing by their boy, and started pulling out clips to cancel The Rock. And so here's the calling bloated. Here it is. Full again, don't want to, not exposing these to cancel him, just so you have the full take of, because The Rock apologized, now the people who are against cancel culture are going to give ammo to those who are for cancel culture to cancel The Rock. Why isn't this playing? Hold on. Here it is. This is him talking about John Cena.
Like a bloated transvestite Wonder Woman, ready to fight crime.
Oh my God, he said the word transvestite. Look, I didn't even know that was a bad word until recently. Like I didn't know that was a word I can't say. Transvestite is apparently a bad word. It is. I learned that. I didn't know. I grew up knowing that was men who dressed like women. The term was transvestite, right? Mrs. Doubtfire was a transvestite. Like that's how I grew up learning that term, you know? But now The Rock said it God knows when, and we're going to try and cancel him. He then went on to say this. Tim Pool's like, oh, thank you for speaking out against racism. Here's The Rock in the ring. So now The Rock has been canceled as well because we're digging up his past and all the inappropriate things he said, Gothix, to justify that he didn't stand with Joe Rogan. Why? This is asinine. This is so stupid. Why are they doing this?
It's because these people, these social justice people, first of all, transvestite isn't the bad word because I know a lot of trans people that call themselves trannies. So this is a specific agenda, this woke agenda, and it's just riling people up to be upset about things that they weren't upset about only like 10 years ago. It's like this, like I'm laughing. I'm freely laughing at this. I'm laughing at him doing the impersonation right now because we should be allowed to laugh. And I think if I think back to like the 90s, how there was so many stand-up comedians doing politically incorrect comedy, how raw it was. It was like we had a society that people, if I can just put it bluntly, had a pair. They had a pair. And now everything is so sensitive. Everything is I'm offended. Well, guess what? Life is harder than words. It is more difficult than words.
It's true. It's a really weird world we live in. But I get frustrated when you have the people who are upset that people are canceling Joe. Because I'm calling out the extreme left a lot, but I'm going to call out the extreme right here because to me, this eye for an eye mentality here, just sort of, yes, I get it. They're calling out the hypocrisy, but I don't think The Rock was being as aggressive as they are trying to paint him out to be. And I think giving the ammo to like dig out all this stuff, I get the irony. I get it's funny, but I just don't see it as helpful. Like, do you think this is fair for Tim Pool to like put out there to all these things and tag him to try and get people now to like hate The Rock because he didn't just support Joe Rogan again after using the N-word, which is like, that's hard for a mega celebrity Hollywood superstar to do. It was pretty ballsy of him to stand up to Joe the first time. You know what I mean? And so now he's like under pressure of like, well, now he's using the N-word. Do you still approach The Rock? Really? It's like he makes his money with Disney. Like he's got to play the game. Like, in a part of me, like I know what The Rock's doing. He's playing the game. Like when I see his response here, I don't think he was as mean to Joe as everyone thinks. Do you feel like pulling out these clips was warranted?
I don't like cancel culture at all, whether it comes from the left or the right, but I also acknowledge the reality that people are not going to understand how dangerous cancel culture is, because clearly it is silencing people. It's silencing discourse. It's silencing dissidence. That is the result of cancel culture. And some people aren't going to learn until it bites them in the ass. and that is the reality. I wish people didn't do it on either side, but unfortunately it's going to happen anyway.
No, Whoopi Goldberg's like the perfect example of that. And it's interesting. She's so high up on herself. I wonder if she'll even learn. She'll just blame others for what happened to her. But You said a big comment on a Disney network. What did you think was going to happen at a certain point, right? And but yeah, it's a very weird. Until you lose it all, you don't really understand. You're out there canceling people, which Whoopi Goldberg was doing, by the way. Whoopi was very freewheeling, shooting people out, and yeah, you don't get it until it bites you in the ass. So all right, so there's a couple more things I wanted to go through while I have you, if you don't mind, because this was also interesting. Just to go back on sort of the N-word. So here's was Sonny Houston fighting with Don Lemon over the use, and I just thought this was an interesting conversation. Like, is there? I know your stance on this, but for those people.
On our very network, Wolf, you know that this term was not used. It wasn't something that journalists could use, and it wasn't something that we aired on our network. But now, because the president said it, I have heard that word, a very hurtful word, over and over and over again.
Not right.
Just today. It is right.
It is right. No, I disagree with you. We have been able to use that word on this network for the entire 9 years that I've been here.
We haven't done it.
Yes, we have. I've used it. I've done it the entire time that I've been here. And the guidance has been, if the anchor is comfortable saying the word, the anchor can say the word on this network. That has been the guidance.
Don, we had a correspondent a couple of years ago, and I've been here for 6, 7 years.
Said
and that correspondent was not was reprimanded for using that term.
No, she was not. She was reprimanded for using an expletive, not for using that word.
That's even worse, Don, because that means that using an expletive is worse than using a racial epithet.
But it's not. She was using the no. If she was on television calling someone that word, then yes, she should be suspended for it. But if she's on television using that word in context as to what someone said or what was used in a court of law or what have you, then no one should be suspended for that. We should not sanitize that word by saying this person called such and such the N-word. No, that person didn't call that person the N-word. That person called Sonny. I know you're going to get upset. That person called you or that person a nigger.
I said it.
The N-word.
I can't believe, Don, that you, as an African-American man, is going to use that word just so flippantly.
Because
Words
we're
matter,
using
and
it.
you should know that.
I do know that.
So anyway, that was he didn't use it flippantly at all. He used it in context. He explained why it was important he used it. He gave her a warning. I didn't think I'd agree with Don Lemon on something, but yeah, I was surprised I did because I think he's got a point, right? And I don't know how Joe or how he used it, right? So is there context where the N-word is okay to be used in your mind?
I think my answer is always going to be the same on free speech. I'm an absolutist when it comes to free speech. And if one particular group of people is allowed to use the word, then that word should be allowed for everyone else. That is, if we're going to have a conversation about equality, the most unequal thing that you can do is say that only these groups of people are allowed to say this word. And even in this context, again, seeing how she freaked out by him saying that, okay, did that word, what is that word? How is that word impacting your life? And everything, her answer that's going to follow is it might lead to something. It is fear. It's something, whatever. Like people are too emotionally invested in things that don't matter.
Okay, I don't disagree with that. And here's something else Joe Rogan said before I get to the update of where we stand today that I also think was just relevant.
You made a really good point. You said the thing is, if you censor yourself just 1%, you say, I'll just censor myself 1%. That's what they want. I'm going to make them happy. And then they're just going to keep moving it. They're just going to keep moving it forward, moving the goalposts, and providing you with more money and giving you more things, but keep moving it in a certain direction. And if you keep giving into it, they're going to have a hold of you and they can control you.
I mean, isn't that what's happening to him right now?
Yeah,
isn't that kind of ironic hearing him talk about him doing it right now?
Yeah, but this is the problem. He's apologized, and he's changed his tone in some instances. And listen, I've been guilty of that too, where before I had my political awakening, I found myself constricting my speech because why? I didn't want to offend people. And now we see it now. It's almost like a game of Fortnite, which I don't really like Fortnite, but you know that little circle that it closes in on people because it's like a battle royale game? Eventually, it's going to close in and you're not going to be able to say anything that goes against the mainstream.
Yeah, it's a very scary place we go, and it's interesting because I think Steph, the alternator, was our co-host, was saying it earlier. He didn't even really apologize because he did like a half-assed "I apologize," but blah, 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 blah. Like I'm going to justify everything I said and not even own the apology, which is even more frustrating. Like it's weird. I'm usually okay with someone trying to be independent, but there is like a little bit of a weird of it's very obvious. He felt the pressure from Spotify. He doesn't want to let them down. He doesn't want to lose that contract, because I'm assuming just getting that contract means something to him, whether he sticks with it later or not. And it really does feel like the executive and Joe trying to figure out, well, how do we fix this? What do we do? Well, what's interesting here is they're not silencing him. They're not backing down. They're going to keep him on the platform, and I got to applaud them for that. It's kind of surprising to me in this day and age, but it's similar to Netflix standing up to Chappelle, standing up, for him. Here's what the CEO said this afternoon. There are no words I can say to adequately convey how deeply sorry I am for the way Joe Rogan Experience continues to impact each of you. This is to the workers. Not only are some of Joe Rogan's comments incredibly hurtful, I want to make clear that they do not represent the values of this company. I know this situation leaves many of you feeling drained, frustrated, and unheard. I think it's important you're aware that we've had conversations with Joe and his team about some of the content on his show, including his history of using some racially insensitive language. Following these discussions and his own reflections, he chose to remove a number of episodes from Spotify. He also issued his own apology over the weekend. So this is interesting. They basically are saying Joe pulled the episodes, not us. I'm curious if he pulled the Saudi Arabia episode. There's something else going on here. I don't necessarily buy that Joe's been the one pulling all these.
I don't either.
So this to me makes me frustrated with Joe in that, I don't feel like he's being fully candid with us. But it does feel like they're trying to, in tandem, put out the fire. While I strongly condemn what Joe has said, and I agree with his decision to remove the past episodes from our platform, I realize some will want more. And I want to make one point very clear. I do not believe that silencing Joe is the answer. Well, that's good. We should have clear lines around content and take action when they are crossed. But canceling voices is a slippery slope. Looking at the issue more broadly, it's critical thinking and an open debate that powers real and necessary progress. So then what he goes on to say is he's now going to donate, or they're going to invest $100 million in the licensing, development, and marketing of music and audio content from historically marginalized groups. This will dramatically increase our efforts in these areas. With some might want to pursue a different path, I believe that more speech on this can be highly effective in improving the status quo, yada, yada. So basically, we agree that this is completely hateful, hurtful. It's making all of our staff upset, but he makes us a lot of money, so we want to keep making money. And we'll throw some money at some marginalized groups as a make good. What do you think of this, Gothix? Does this apology work for you?
This apology is nonsense. First of all, throwing some money at marginalized groups. Who is marginalized? Who is going to admit that they're marginalized? I would never. That's yuck. And second of all, this idea that because here's the problem is Joe has a very massive platform on Spotify, and he is trying to, I'm assuming he's trying to maintain his audience, maintain his contract, and also seek the truth. Unfortunately, you can't do both. You have to pick one or the other. And I think in this situation, if he was just to give them the finger and say, you know what, I'm going to say whatever I'm going to say, and I'm not going to delete any of my episodes. If he were to do that, I am confident he would be fine financially if this is a big issue for him. But unfortunately, we're at the stage where you're going to have to choose one. You want the truth or you want your money?
Right. They want the money, is what I ultimately think. I don't think they care about the truth. What's interesting to me is I wonder if they would have done all this for a nobody, right? I don't think they would have. Some smaller tier platform would have probably just gotten wiped off the platform, or performer rather would have gotten wiped off the platform. But Joe Rogan, who they paid $100 million to, who has probably their biggest audience, right? That's the thing you guys got to remember. Neil Young doesn't bring in money to Spotify. I don't even mean disrespect. I like Neil Young. I love Harvest Moon. I know it's sleep music for a lot of you, but I dig it. And I don't want to disrespect him. That said, he's a nobody on Spotify in the scope of things. He makes no money. Joe Rogan brings in tons of weekly, users that download specifically for him. And if they sided with Neil Young over Joe Rogan, they'd lose a fortune. This is a business that at the end of the day needs to make money. And that's really where the bottom line is. I mean, it sounds like we're on the same page. There's no truthful telling here. this is all about trying to keep the bottom line above.
Yeah. That's it. And the donating to the marginalized groups, whatever, that is a performative virtue signaling. Okay, because I don't know if you guys remember, there was something about peaceful protests, and I don't know, those leaders are sitting very comfortably in their mansions. I didn't benefit from those protests at all. So I can't wait to see how I'm going to benefit from whatever the hell this is.
Right. So that's where we stand on this. And then add to that Rumble. has made a big move, and they're like, we're offering Joe Rogan $100 million. We stand with you and your guests, your legion of fans, a desire for real conversation. We'd like to offer you 100 million reasons to make the world a better place. How about you bring all your shows to Rumble, both old and new, with no censorship, for 100 million bucks over 4 years? This is our chance to save the world. And yes, this is totally legit. This is getting a lot of press right now because they're like, we'll pay you $100 million. Now, over the course of 4 years is a long time. I think the Spotify deal was only 2. So I don't see Joe taking this deal, but good on Rumble to take this marketing opportunity to try and get attention for themselves, which is what this is. But at the same time, clearly putting out to the message of the world, like, we don't want to censor anybody. This is another platform where you guys can come. And honestly, we need more platforms like this. What's frustrating is, these platforms are out there, but it's always like the conservative one. You know what I mean? It's like, it's so frustrating where it's like the freedom of speech, lack of censorship has become like a political debate now, especially given that was like a liberal viewpoint for so long. Like, I'm so confused why we aren't more in agreement of like, we shouldn't censor artists. Like, you as the consumer have the choice whether you pay or support the artist. Stop trying to take it away from us. It's terrifying where this is headed. What do you think?
Well, first of all, I don't personally, I don't think he should take that because Spotify has more of a reach than Rumble does. And this is part of the reason why I haven't completely abandoned a lot of these big tech platforms that are censoring the hell out of people. It's because you will essentially lose the battle and have a user base that is curated for one particular leaning. And you don't want that.
Right.
So as far as like, man, I just lost my thought. I'm sorry. I'm getting cut. It's very okay. So here's the thing. America right now, I think America is going through some type of a revolution, and I think the idea is that people are, for political reasons, people are trying to deconstruct America. And how do you do that? You get Americans to turn against the things that make America America, free speech being one of them. If you can get your society to condemn something that's in the Constitution, like, what else is there going to be? What other things are they going to say, what, this is bad, we shouldn't have it anymore? And that's the very worrisome thing, is we've now started listening to movements and we started chanting slogans instead of just uniting on things that make us America, and instead of like this crap, whatever the hell this is. I don't know. This is a mess.
Well said. It's true, because it's like, that's what sort of took me over. It's like, because as I lived in my liberal bubble for so long in California, you really are like sheep of like all going to one place. And I think so many people in politics now are falling to that same, whether it's the left or the right, this like extreme, like, I have to agree with my whole party. And it's like, why? How do you not have different like viewpoints on every issue that might be over here or over there?
Right. And I have to just say this just to, so if your audience doesn't know, I used to be on the left and I used to think like this. I used to have severe Trump derangement syndrome for a minute. And it wasn't until I took myself out of that echo chamber and started having conversations with people that I vilified based on what the media was telling me or based on whatever politician was telling me. And this is in my opinion mass brainwashing, and it's the result of just living in an echo chamber, and you guys got to step out of it. What is happening is not okay. It's not right. And eventually it's going to hurt you. The same people that are rallying for the censorship, there's going to be a time and a place where you're not going to be able to voice your opinion on something because it's going to go against the establishment.
Well said. Look, it's such a good conversation. I want to have you back as often as you're ready, and I want to make sure you guys know where to find Gothix to have more conversations, because I hope you were impressed with her like I was. You don't have to agree with her, but I love that she brings her truth, the truth, what she thinks. She doesn't hide behind her worries or tight ropes. She says it the way it is. And you can go over to Gothix TV if you want to support her. In fact, you can check out our interview. If you want to see us talk some more, you can go show some love to that. I think the mods are sharing the link to her channel as well as the piece. But go show her some support. I'm putting it in the pinned comment here as well. Go show her subscribe and everything else. As we wrap up this conversation, like, what do you think will happen? I mean, it sounds like Joe's going to get through this again. I'll be honest, I was worried this weekend. Like, when I saw this coming out, I'm like, oh, damn, they might have finally gotten him. Like, I thought Spotify was going to cave when they started seeing these I was like, oh man, because there's like you don't talk about the Holocaust. You don't talk about, there's just certain topics in Hollywood that companies usually like, you can't do this. And now we have a week where Whoopi Goldberg just said that thing about the Holocaust, and now Joe's using the N-word, and both of them are going to manage to not be removed from the platform. Are you surprised?
All I'm going to say is this. You remember when Trump was deplatformed on Twitter and people kept saying, if they can do it to the sitting president, think of who they can do it to next. And look what's happening. A lot of people are getting deplatformed. And if he goes, I don't know what's going to happen, because I believe, because I've been entrenched in sort of this political rabbit hole for the last 2 years, and I believe he's very close to exposing a lot of things that people are talking about that the establishment does not want us to know. So I don't know. I guess time will tell.
But are you surprised to see Spotify still hold ground even today?
I'm not surprised. Money talks for people. But I mean, yeah, I don't know what to think anymore, honestly.
Yeah, we're in new ground. It's like the reason I support Joe Rogan is I agree with you. Like, I don't always agree with what he says, but I will fight for his right to say it. And it's like, I'm not an idiot. I know he's the host of Fear Factor. He's a fucking stand-up comedian. I'm not getting medical advice from Joe Rogan. Correct. I don't understand why people are treating him as if he's like this above all expert doctor. Like, anybody who's doing that is a moron. I'm sorry. We listen to him to get entertained, to learn other viewpoints, to challenge our own viewpoints, to then go do research and like learn more, right? I don't understand why we can't accept the fact that he's a comic first and foremost. Why do you think people are? I mean, I know because I think it is. They don't want him to keep saying things that they can't control. Is really the ultimate answer. I feel like is where this all is coming from, and why I can't support the cancellation, and why it doesn't sort of matter what I think about all this. There's a bigger issue here that I think you just all need to be aware of. Final thoughts.
Final thoughts is like, first of all, we know the reason why they're censoring him, and the idea that he's spreading misinformation is to also claim that the rest of society are so ignorant that they're not able to make their own decisions, that they have to go to a comedian on Spotify to find information. That's what you're saying about the population. That's my final thought on it. Joe Rogan, stop apologizing, please.
Yeah, it's weird because it's weird. You've helped me change a bit, but it's like I appreciate that he doesn't like what he said. Like, I appreciate someone who comes forward and says, "Yeah, I said that shit. I don't like seeing it. I don't say that shit anymore." Like, I think that was a real moment when I first watched it that I bought, and I did believe it. I meant to watch his apology. In fact, can we do that quick? Let's see this because it is. I promised I would.
Friends, I'm making this video to talk about the most regretful and shameful thing that I've ever had to talk about publicly. There's a video that's out that's a compilation of me saying the N-word. It's a video that's made of clips taken out of context of me of 12 years of conversations on my podcast, and it's all smushed together, and it looks fucking horrible, even to me. Now, I know that to most people, there's no context where a white person is ever allowed to say that word, never mind publicly on a podcast. And I agree with that now. I haven't said it in years, but for a long time, when I would bring that word up, like if it would come up in conversation, instead of saying the N-word, I would just say the word. I thought as long as it was in context, people would understand what I was doing. Like that context was part of the clip we were talking about Red Fox, how Red Fox said that word on television in the 1970s, and how times have changed so much since then. Or about how Richard Pryor used it as one of the titles of one of his albums. Or I was quoting a Lenny Bruce bit, or I was quoting a Paul Mooney bit, or I was talking about how Quentin Tarantino used it repeatedly in Pulp Fiction. Or I was talking about how a Netflix executive, ironically, used it because he was trying to compare it to another offensive word, and he said it out loud, and they fired him. Not calling anybody, or just saying the word out loud.
See, what's weird, just to pause for a second, and hey, Lewis, sorry I didn't see you in there. Welcome to the show. What's weird to me is the fact that he's not really apologizing because he's defending himself. It's like he could have just done the same defense instead of the apology, right? And it's a weird sort of both things. Do you sense that? Like, if he's going to apologize and say, look, I don't want to use this word, I shouldn't use this word, sorry I used the word, and end of video, right? But it is weird to like, yeah, oh my God, it's so awful. But I was doing this and I was doing, it's like he's just piling on his excuses, which I understand why we do that as humans, but you got to learn, like, that's not really an apology when you add a but at the end of it. Gothix, do you see that point?
This video, like I'm listening to it, I don't even think he owed an explanation. It doesn't sound like an apology, but he's trying to explain himself, and he doesn't have to. Because be perfectly honest, people are going to still watch this, and they're still going to call him a racist. The thing that would really change things is if we had more black people with loud voices that could also speak on the topic of the N-word and how the N-word isn't something that they're offended by or whatever. That would be impactful, because right now it's being positioned like this is something that is so detrimental to black people when that's not the reality of the general consensus.
Yeah, I want to get your thoughts as well. I know I'm going to get her out of here too, because
I was also talking about how there's not another word like it in the entire English language, because it's a word where only one group of people is allowed to use it, and they can use it in so many different ways. Like if a white person says that word, it's racist and toxic, but a black person can use it, and it could be a punchline, it could be a term of endearment, it could be lyrics to a rap song, it could be a positive affirmation. It's a very unusual word, but it's not my word to use. I'm well aware of that now, but for years I used it in that manner. I never used it to be racist, because I'm not racist. But whenever you're in a situation where you have to say, I'm not racist, you fucked up.
Do you agree with that, guys? I mean, in this culture, I guess he's right.
I'm so fixed on the fact that he says it's not my word to use. Oh, so it's the word for black people to use? As he just said, it's a form of endearment for black people. We need to have an honest conversation about that, about why that word is a form of endearment for black people. The second a white person says it, it's racist. Something's wrong. Something is wrong with that logic.
And I clearly have fucked up. And that's my intention to express myself in this video, to say, there's nothing I can do to take that back. I wish I could. Obviously, that's not possible. I do hope that, if anything, that this can be a teachable moment. Because I never thought it would ever be taken out of context and put in a video like that. And now that it is, holy shit, it looks bad. And it's part of also me doing this podcast for thousands of hours, thousands of episodes, over 12 years. I said a lot of fucking stupid shit, which is fine when you're talking about most things, but not when you're talking about race. And there's another clip that I have to address. There's a clip from 11 years ago. I was telling a story on the podcast about how me and my friend Tommy and his girlfriend, we got really high. We were in Philadelphia, and we went to go see Planet of the Apes. And we didn't know where we were going. We just got dropped off by a cab, and we got dropped off in this all-black neighborhood. And I was trying to make the story entertaining, and I said, we got out, and it was like we were in Africa. It's like we were in Planet of the Apes. I did not, nor would I ever say that black people are apes, but it sure fucking sounded like that. And I immediately afterwards said, that's a racist thing to say. Planet of the Apes wasn't even in Africa. I was just saying there's a lot of black people there. Then I went on.
This one's tough to buy. Dude, you said that was racist. I'm going to call it for what it was. It was racist. He tried to make a joke. Do I think he meant it like in a hateful I don't think he did. I really don't. I think he clearly realized, oh, I should have said that. That was mean. He was trying to be edgy. He was high. But yeah, it was a racist comment. And his trying to justify it all like isn't helping me. I don't know. Either of you have a thought? Disagree with me?
I mean,
I'm here to meet Gothix.
Hi.
I'm here to meet you. That's all. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Yeah. Well, we got Andy outnumbered here. 2 brown people. Let's attack them.
Excellent.
Do it. Bring it on. Yeah. Go ahead.
I think the dude. I think the Africa comment is what he really thinks, and it is racist, honestly. But then again, should it be on? I mean, should it be people's choice to just turn it off? I'm not a fan of Joe Rogan. I don't listen to him. So yeah, I mean, should he be just like fired? That's another debate. But yeah, see, it's kind of
what you said, Lewis, is right though, because it's like whether we agree or not, this could have exposed a real feeling he has. In which case, certain people may not want to support him or watch him, and they have that right. But I feel like just like the same right of Joe has a right to explain it and say, well, that's not what I meant. I think this could go, be a fork in the road for some viewers, but that's the reality, right? It should still be a fork in the road.
I think
support him or don't, right?
I think that's what he meant. That's just my opinion. But I'm not going to be watching him more or less because I'm not a real fan. I mean, I think I like UFC, but that this is a racist comment. Is he racist? Maybe he thinks he's a little superior, but is that justifiable for him to lose his job or to be canceled? That's another, probably not.
He literally goes, I was just trying to make it into a story. Planet of the Apes, all I was trying to say was there was a lot of black people there. It's like, dude, you're not helping explain this justification, dude.
To talk about what a positive experience it was and how much
but I liked all the black people, so I'm not racist.
Movie in a black neighborhood. It wasn't a racist story, but it sounded terrible. And
why did it sound terrible then? Because you're acknowledging it sounded racist. He wants it both ways here. The ape story is the one where I'm like, dude, that's not a good look, man. You look racist. And he doesn't really even acknowledge it. He sort of does.
Like I said, you can have clunky stories about anything, but not about race. And so I deleted that whole podcast, but obviously somebody made a clip out of it and
I deleted it because it was racist, but someone kept an evidence.
Taken out of context. It looks terrible, but it looks terrible even in context. It's a fucking idiotic thing to say, and I was just trying to be entertaining. I certainly wasn't trying to be racist, and I certainly would never want to offend someone for entertainment with something as stupid as racism. My hope is that, look, I can't go back in time and change what I've said. I wish I could. Obviously, that's not possible. But I do hope that this can be a teachable moment.
For who?
For anybody that doesn't realize how offensive that word can be coming out of a white person's mouth, in context or out of context. My sincere and humble apologies. I wish there was more that I could say, but all of this is just me talking from the bottom of my heart. It makes me sick watching that video, but hopefully at least some of you will accept this and understand where I'm coming from. My apologies and much love. My sincere, deepest apologies and much love.
He got a lot of apologies, a lot. You were just stewing over there, Gothix. So what are your thoughts?
My thought is, as he just said, you can have clunky stories, but not when it comes to race. So translation, you can have jokes, but not at the expense of racism. That's what I hear. But if we go back and we think of all the black comedians that have said some really raunchy, dark comedy about white people, we can have this conversation, but people have selective outrage. They want to look at this and say, oh, I'm offended by this, but they don't want to talk about the other half. And this is why I'm a free speech absolutist. I don't think he's truly sorry. I think this is a result of feeling the wrath of the mob. And now look what he's doing. He's on the internet apologizing to 5 million people that he doesn't even know personally. Why? Who? Why?
But Gothix, let me ask you a question, though. There's not the history of black people oppressing white people like there is the other way around. That's what I think the feeling is about not using the word. But I'm going to ask you that question. What do you think of that?
About what?
Well, there's not the history of black people having white slaves. I mean,
so what? How does that?
I'm saying it's a history of oppression that white people have against black people. So that's why the word is not to be used. You know, it's okay for black comedians, like you said, to make fun of white people in society.
So black people have sold and enslaved other black people, so we could make that argument. But we could also go back far and say the history of there hasn't been a history of black people doing this to white people. That's in the history. Why are we justifying bad, overt racism now when in the context of black people being racist towards white people? Everywhere I look, there's an article about whiteness and white supremacy and all this stuff, and now we have white people that are walking on eggshells because they don't want to be villainized because of something their ancestors did hundreds of years ago. Like, why are we going back in time and then using that for justification to justify how terrible people are being in the present? Doesn't make sense.
I think people are terrible every person throughout history has been terrible to other human beings, but I'm just asking you that because that's what they're going to come back with. Like, that's why white people can't use the word.
Right.
You know, they're gonna say it's because the history behind it.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
that's what I was taught. That's why I don't use the word. That's why I don't. I just get But it's weird. There is a confidence to how he used the word that I can see why people would be upset. I can see it, but I think it came down to, as we wrap this up, and I'm curious your thought, Lewis, too, and I want to get your final words. But as Gothix said, who gets to be offended the most, where we start deplatforming artists from places, is really ultimately the I think the summary of it, right? Lewis, to wrap up your thoughts of like, yes, we see why this is offensive to some. I get it. Yeah. I was offended by the apes thing the most. But does that mean he should be deplatformed and can't make this a learning lesson?
I'm not offended by it, but it shows that he does have prejudice against them. I don't care about being called names. Honestly, names are bullshit. You know, physical harm is what you have to worry about. Sticks and stones, baby. But it shows that he does have a prejudice, in my opinion, and stuff with that. So like that's what I'm saying about it.
Gothix, final thoughts?
Oh man, people need to grow some balls and stop being offended by words.
I have two right here.
Oh man, it's honestly, it's just there is going to be a rude awakening when people realize that they've been shoved in one particular sector of the political environment. They've been shoved in one direction because of fear of words. And I care about action. I care about behavior. I care about how this is manifesting in society. Hurt feelings don't matter to me in the grand scheme of things. I can turn off the TV or have, not being offended by it. But yeah, that's my final word.
No, I think that's a fair view, right? We at the end of the day have the choice of whether you want to support these people. If you want to support Spotify, if you want to support Joe, if you want to support Chappelle, if you want to support Netflix, whoever's offending you, you have the right to support them or not, as long as we still keep them on these platforms. That's the reality. So I'm not for censoring any of these people. I don't love what he said, and you don't have to love what he said either. But I'm curious what your thoughts are on this. If you're watching live, don't go anywhere. If you're watching on the replay, tell us down in the comments below. Hit the subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the bell for all alerts. Smash the like button. Help the engagement and get the conversation going. Also, want to make sure you support, whether you're watching live or on the replay, support my two amazing colleagues here. First of all, you can find Gothix over at Gothix TV on YouTube. Go support. We had a good interview as well. You can check out all of our content there at YouTube. Is it still Gothix TV? Get you there?
Yeah.
YouTube.com/GothixTV. And also make sure you support Nerd Report. Lewis, my man, Nerd Report, my favorite for all your nerdy stuff and monkey gas. You can head over. Is that racist, Lewis? Oh my God, you're being canceled.
Monkeys have gas.
That's actually Steph. She's getting canceled. We're gonna have her on in a minute. But go support Nerd Report as well, guys. If you're watching live, don't go anywhere. We're gonna still keep this conversation going, reading your chats, etc. But I'm clipping this for the replay. Thank you guys for watching on the replay. If you didn't watch live, where were you? Hit that join button, become a member, hit these videos in the meanwhile, and all that jazz.